YouTube, welcome on back to Artichoke Dip. My name is Rob, solo tabletop gamer, and in this video I want to discuss tabletop burnout, if you will, how to avoid it, and maybe you might be experiencing this and some of the tips and tricks and tools that I use, me personally, to avoid it. So before we get into this video, if you like the video, click the like button. It lets me know you like the content. I'll make more like it. And if you're new here, you just stumbled across my channel, feel free to click that subscribe button, followed by the bell icon. Every time I upload a new video, you get a notification so you will not miss one. Oh, one last thing. Some of you may be noticing, I'm wearing the same shirt and the same hat from my last video. Here's a little secret. I can make more than one video in a day, so I'm on a roll today and I decided it's time to click out another video. So let's talk about this. Gamer burnout. What is gamer burnout? So for me, what gamer burnout is when you get to a point that you have lost interest with gaming. You find when you set aside that time to sit down to game that perhaps you're disinterested, or maybe something else is occupying your mind so much that it's actually pulling away from that. And there's a few reasons I found personally with me, and they may be affecting you as well, and I'm hoping maybe this video will help sort some of those out and help maybe some of this information will help you out, and if you're stuck in that rut, get you out. So there's two different ways when I think about it that gamer burnout can, affect us. The first one is it's self-induced, and what that is playing the same game system over and over every game session, and over time it's going to feel stale, and every time you sit down you're gonna find it's gonna feel more or less like a chore rather than what it should be, and that should be a time of enjoyment. And whether you're playing in a group or you're playing solo, and you're gonna find, yeah, that can happen. That's why you want to change stuff up every now and then. Try different game systems. Now, one of the things that I found when it comes to, now I'm talking about tabletop RPG games here, and currently I am playing, just to give you an example, I'm in 3 different campaigns right now currently. The one I am playing solo, just for me, is this one, the Test of the Warlords, which I talked about in my last video. I am also currently playing in the Realms of Terranoth in the Genesis system with my friend Lance Addington, who is also the moderator of my Facebook group, and I am also playing old school D&D in the Keep of the Borderlands with my other friend, Mr. Trevor, who runs Deathstalker 5 on YouTube. That's his channel. If you haven't checked it out, stop by and see what he has to offer. He's got some pretty cool stuff. He's got a great sense of humor, and yeah, some of his stories are, as he puts it, off the rails. But with that being said, so that can be self-induced. We can do it to ourselves. A good example is playing one particular edition of D&D over and over. That repetitiveness gets old, and you want something new. Sometimes changing up the setting. If all you've been playing is in the realm of D&D, as it has been written, try something new. Maybe try a Call of Cthulhu setting, or maybe more of a futuristic setting, or perhaps make something up that's different. Eliminate some classes. Make some classes that just cannot be used within the world. Add some challenges into it that'll make it more unique and interesting, and it'll add a little bit more flavor to it. The other side of it, which can cause gamer burnout, which I think affects more so many of us than we might even realize, and that is external And what I mean by external is you're watching this on YouTube right now, and I'm sure for every video that you watch that you may take something away from, that may interest you, that may make you laugh, or you're gonna find at least what 10 videos to that one that's just negative. It's just negative, dark stuff where either somebody's talking about it's, you know, the end of this, or it's the end of that, or, you know, everything's just going to hell in a handbasket. And that can play on our, you know, our psyche over time, and it can give you a really dismal outlook on everything that will affect everything. And like I said, I've noticed this with me. So that's one thing I have found that I try to minimize in my life. I try not to engage too much in just all the dark stuff. Now, it doesn't mean I don't pay attention to world events and what's going on around me, because I do, but I limit the amount of time that I do, and because there definitely is just an amount of oversaturation of it to the point that you can only take so much, and after, you know, after so much, you start looking through the lens of, you know, abandon all hope, and I don't think that's the case. But anyways, so there's some tips and tricks I want to tell you that I personally use, and they may help you out and get you out of that rut if you're feeling gamer burnout. First thing is, if you're engaging in tabletop RPGs, you like tabletop RPGs, if you have a library, one of the tricks that I like to do is, at that point, cycle my books out. And what I'll do is, after I've been playing systems for a while and I'm getting kind of worn out on them, and I want something new, I'll actually rearrange my bookshelves, and I'll put those to the back, and I'll bring the ones in the back up to the front. And these are books I haven't seen in a while, haven't thought about in a while, and it's at that point, it's new challenges, new rule sets, new classes, new worlds, new things such like that, that when I get into them and engage with them, they're like brand new again, and it really breathes a breath of fresh air into the gaming hobby. Another thing that too is, sometimes you can have a campaign that can last just too long, too many game sessions. Maybe try making campaigns that might last 2-3 game sessions at the most, and then move on to something else, move on to something new. Give yourself some time restraints on that particular setting that you're using, because maybe you're just overdoing yourself on that setting, and that will also cause gamer burnout, and you'll fall into that rut as well. Other things that you can look at and focus on in the hobby, you don't always have to be rolling dice in gaming in order to enjoy the hobby. You can paint miniatures, you could build terrain, you could sit down and at that point create randomized tables or build other things for your next gaming session that you currently use in your allotted time. Now, with that being said, I know there's two different types of gamers, we'll say. There is the spontaneous gamer, which these are people that they really don't follow a schedule. They just when they get that urge to play, they play, and they could play for a couple hours or a couple days, and then once they're done for a while, and they may come back to it a few weeks or a few months later. Then there's people like me that I like to play on scheduled times. So I typically reserve, like I said, the weekends for my time, Friday and Saturday and or Sunday evening, just depending on how the scheduling falls of when I play. Now, at times I will take a break away from tabletop RPGs, but before I get into what I use for those, the other thing I want to talk about is your setting. If you really look at where you're doing your gaming, if you're doing your gaming and you have a lot of interruptions, you know, this thing is constantly going off, you're getting text message alerts, your phone's ringing, something's just constantly drawing your attention away from it, that's going to ruin your gaming session. And one of the things that I do when I want to play solo is I'll turn the phone off. This is my time. It's my solo RPG time, and I don't want to be interrupted while I am doing that. And, you know, to a certain extent, it shouldn't be. Gaming should be a fun event and a time that you sit down and you kind of put aside your worries and your stresses and everything else of everyday life, and gives you a moment to indulge in this entertainment and kind of recharge your batteries, if you will. Kind of gives you that outlet to let your mind and your imagination expand and wander for a while. And that's the reason why we do this, right? That's exactly why. Now, when my setting, I will get rid of the screens. I will get rid of those. I will turn the computer off so the computer isn't on. So, and what I will do is I will stream through my PS3 is the soundtracks of Skyrim. And there's a whole bunch on YouTube. There's a whole bunch of playlists that span from 4 to 6 hours. Some of them 8 hours or longer. I've seen some up to like 10 hours. But it's relaxing music that has that medieval fantasy feel to it. And it really triggers my brain into, okay, this is gaming time. This is time that I'm ignoring everything else in the outside world, and I'm focusing here on this gaming experience. And it really helps. Maybe a little trick that maybe for some of you out there, you may find that actually it really does work. You'd be surprised how some fantasy type of music that's you know, doesn't have lyrics in it, that's instrumental, it's kind of background, and it helps really your imagination to flourish a little bit, because even though you may not be actively listening to it, it does kind of get your mind moving. It gets them gears turning, and it really does make for some really good gaming experiences. And I have found that I really do enjoy that a lot, and I use that tool quite a bit, whether it's, you know, game playlists that I've created myself, or it's something that I'm streaming, whether it be through Spotify or it be through YouTube or whatever else. But it doesn't matter, it does help. It really does help. Another thing that I will substitute out when I have that scheduled time to game, it doesn't mean I'm always going to sit down and play an RPG. Sometimes there's other things that I will do to kind of break it up. And it's good to do that every once in a while, because if you're finding yourself, you're playing this tabletop RPG and your random tables, nothing seems to really coalesce or fit into the story you're currently doing, and you're just finding yourself getting frustrated with it, it could be that you're just getting burned out on it. Maybe focusing a game session on something else, a different game, something like that, and coming back to it. Then when you look at that randomized table that comes up, your imagination will be like, yeah, this is cool. This is something I've never thought about. In a different way I can take the game and give you a different perspective on it, if you will. Because the one thing that we share with our hobby is the fact that we're not relying on a computer processor to generate graphics and generate sounds and reactions and everything else. Everything that's occurring is happening in our heads, and we're creating this in real time, and the dice are helping evolve that story. So sometimes it's good with your environment around you, if you have certain aids to help, to be able to help focus on what you're doing. But enough about that. There's a few things I want to share with you that personally for me I have found that I will substitute on gaming nights and I will use in place of tabletop RPGs that really offer a lot of fun. They play like an RPG, but they're not so much an RPG, and they can prevent gamer burnout for the fact that you're still gaming, but you are more or less not having to worry about randomized tables and other things so often. So the first thing I'm going to bring out that I will use this. I enjoy it, and I have found it offers some unique challenges. And that is Swords and Sorcery. Swords and Sorcery is a very unique miniature. It's a strategy miniature game that, as you move across the tiles, there are different story points that you will hit, and there are different obstacles that you'll have to overcome, and of course with encounters and active NPCs inside of this world. But the cool thing that I found is, even though like most dungeon crawlers it seemed like it's pretty straightforward and you have your tiles and your minis and everything, this offers a little bit more strategy to it, and you're gonna find yourself at times to where you're gonna get those moments of like, ooh man, this isn't going right, or you know, sometimes the dice roll all in your favor and other times it doesn't. I have also found, playing through this scenario, there are times where I'll get beat, and it may take one or two times, and then it finally dawns on me. I'm like, I know what I've been doing wrong. I can see what I've been doing wrong, and I have to shift my strategy, and that will give me the determination to jump back into it and want to do it again to be able to achieve it. The other thing I like about it is it's immersive. It's not a system you're going to sit down and within 30 minutes you'll be done. This is going to take several hours for you to get through, and I really do enjoy it. That's one of the games when I kind of start to get burned out on tabletop RPGs that I will jump into and I will substitute out. The next one that when I start to feel kind of tabletop burnout on fantasy, let me get it out of the way. Fantasy is my favorite setting of all, but there's times to where I want something a little different. And what I use to combat that and have a lot of fun with is I will pull this one out by Fantasy Flight Games, Fallout. Fallout is an excellent, excellent game. I played the video games. Believe it or not, I enjoy the board game more than I do the video game. There are just an endless amount of quests. You know, when it comes to Fallout, the best way I can explain this game is how far down the rabbit hole do you really want to go? Because that's what it feels like. You get to one quest, which leads to another quest, which leads to this, which leads to that, and you just keep going and going and going and going. And while this is all going, you have these horrible encounters that are spawning out on the board, and you want to try to really hit them shops and, you know, upgrade your equipment for the next encounter. And it's a very, very cool game. I really enjoy it. I bought the expansion for this and put it in there as well. And I find when I start to get burned out on fantasy for a little bit, I'll jump to Fallout. It's set in a post-apocalyptic world after the bombs have went off and you emerge from your bunker out into this strange, desolate, vast new world with survivors all about, and no lack of mutants as well. Now, another one that I like to play in place of a tabletop RPG, and it's I view it as an RPG unto itself. You know, if I want to get into a very immersive RPG experience in a board game setting, I will play Gloomhaven. But typically, when it comes to that, if I want to get that immersive, I'm just going to play a tabletop RPG. But the one that I have found that I really do enjoy, it has great character development to it. you have an overall really good feel of an RPG system. You have various amount of different tiles. There's storybooks that go along with it. There's a huge amount of encounters that go with it, and that is Folklore: The Affliction. Folklore: The Affliction is a very fun game. The thing that is so unique in the replayability of this game is the fact that even though in the storybook the story points never change, those are, you know, set, it's the path that you take to get there which changes, and with them changes the different encounters you may encounter. And so every time the story's different, it plays out very well. It's a very well balanced game, and it really does help when I kind of feel the burnout of tabletop RPG, that I'll use this, and I'll find by the time I get done playing through a scenario with this that I'm ready to jump back into a tabletop RPG, for the fact that I'll get a lot of ideas from it. And this is one that I really I've enjoyed. I talked a lot about. I did an entire video on this one, and I love it. Folklore: The Affliction. And man, I could go on about it for, you know, hours, but I'm not. So there's been a couple games that have been newer that I use in place when I'm starting to feel tabletop burnout, and one of them that I have recently, this game is an excellent game and I highly recommend to anybody, and that is Mage Knight. And this is the Ultimate Edition. And Mage Knight, it's a deck building game, but the fact that you have terrain, you have minis, and there's a lot of strategy. It's a completely different way of gaming compared to a tabletop RPG experience, to where you have your movement. In this, your movement can be hampered. You have various different actions that can be hampered depending on how much damage you really take. So there is a huge amount of strategy even for a single player, and even if you were playing in a group setting, that strategy would only be increased for the fact that there's a rule set in here I'll probably never play, and it's called player versus player. Well, when you play solo, you don't have that. You just have what they call a dummy player, which basically you're cycling out cards that's keeping track of each round for you. And I have to say, this is an excellent game system, and if you're starting to feel kind of gamer burnout, to where you are getting in that rut of tabletop RPGs and you're looking for something to kind of give you a little bit of let me put this, some more strategy into your gaming rather than just all swords and sorcery, no pun intended, Mage Knight's a good one. Now, last but not least of the board games, another one that I like to use, it's very simple. Rules are very simple. It's a good game. It's like a classic fairy tale type of story that involves, you know, the if you will, the evil sorceress and the good king, and, you know, trying to defend the kingdom from the impending evil, and that will be Mice and Mystics. And this is a really cool game system. It really is. It's a family friendly game, so it's a game that you could play with adults, you could play with children, you could play with children and adults. And it is a dungeon crawler, and just like a dungeon crawler, the whole entire process of the game is to obviously explore the tiles, defeat the encounters, and try to build up your experience and upgrade your weapons and your armor, and of course try to integrate more spells and tricks and stuff into your inventory to be able to give you the upper edge to complete the scenario, to move on to the next story mode. And the game system to continue the story on and keep just going further on into it. So those are some board games that I'll use to get me out of that rut. They really, really do help. Now, I have other board games, far too many for this video, that I will, at that point, substitute every now and then. I'll bring in and out, whether it's a D20 game system like Castle Ravenloft or the Wrath of Ashelond or Hero Quest. I still enjoy Hero Quest. I found the solo variant rules online, which I printed off and put in there. And sometimes it's interesting just to sit down and play a scenario or two of Hero Quest and have fun with it. It's still gaming, it's still tabletop gaming, but at times it breaks that cycle when I start to notice that I'm beginning to struggle with the current campaign I'm in, and I kind of recognize the signs, and I'm like, okay, it's time to do something different and come back to this next week and pick up where I left off. Now, there's times to where you may feel gamer burnout, to where maybe you don't want to engage with the table. Maybe you just you know, you're not feeling up to that, and that happens from time to time. That really does. It happens with even electronic gamers that spend hours on end on, you know, mass media online RPGs and first-person shooters. Over time, that repetitive type of gaming kind of gets stale and you want to do something else for a while. For me, I like to reserve video games for when I get that. When I get to the point to where I need a change from tabletop, and every so often I like to go back to some of them games I really enjoyed. And believe it or not, I still use a PS2 and I have a PS3 I have currently set up in here, and I also have an old Atari system thanks to Deathstalker 5 that he sent to me. So I have a library that I can draw from, and I can, you know, use there as well. A couple examples that I'll use when it comes to gaming time, if I'm not up to tabletop RPGing or setting up a board game or stuff like that, is I will break out some of these old classics. This one right here, Dark Alliance for the PS2. This is by far still my favorite video game I think I have ever played, ever. And I have yet to find one that I like as much as that. And of course the follow-up, which was really good, I really enjoyed it, that gave you more character options, was Dark Alliance 2. And both of these are just excellent games. They were ahead of their time for the fact that the graphics that they offered, the sound, the replayability. It's one of the very few games that after you beat it, typically with most video games, after you've gone through it and the credits have rolled, you know, you're pretty much done with it. You kind of look at it and you're like, yeah, I already did that. But when it comes to these games, I never get sick of them, and I find myself coming back to them and enjoying those challenges. And yeah, very, very, very cool. Even go a little bit further back than that, another thing I have recently got into with electronic, and I found myself, as I started to feel better and I was getting over this virus I had, and I really wasn't up to sitting down and doing tabletop, but I wanted to do something with gaming. And I broke this one out, which is for the original PlayStation, which is the Dark Omen, which, if you're not familiar with it, this is a licensed game through Games Workshop, and it is literally electronic Warhammer. And just like any miniature skirmish game, you, at that point, you got a virtual battle map, and you have armies which you deploy, and you deploy your armies as to who you want to attack and defend and try to win this skirmish scenario, which is kind of, you know, it's interesting. Now, granted, it's dated, it's you know, compared to the modern graphics that they have now for video games, you know, there's no comparison, but the overall fact is it's still the miniature skirmish experience, but it's just on a different level. It's an electronic rather than setting everything up. Now, these are things that I use. Now, sometimes when it comes to gaming night, maybe I just don't want to game whatsoever. And sometimes that happens. And typically what I will do to fill my time is I'll find related movies. I will watch movies of sword and sorcery, and I'll allot my time to where I'm going to watch 2 movies on swords and sorcery, or I will just sit down and read a book and fill that time. But nevertheless, I always try to occupy that time that I have scheduled for myself for something to do with gaming or related to gaming, or just straight up gaming, because I enjoy gaming. I really do. And I'm really hoping for some of you that out there that may be stuck in this rut and feeling this, these are some of the tips and tricks that I use to help get me out of that rut, to help keep it fresh, help keep things moving and going the right direction. And in this day and age in which we live in, these are some of the things that, that we have to do. It's in this new norm. Now, there is one other thing that I can suggest to you, and that is, if you're just straight out, you're feeling gamer burnout, and maybe you're just completely sick of this game. Maybe you've played this game so many times that you don't want to go through it again. You're just fed up. You want something new. Try reaching out on different chat groups, stuff like that. Very good example, I have a Facebook group where there's a lot of solo RPG players on there. Reach out to these other RPG players. Perhaps maybe there's a game system, maybe they're just, they're in the same spot, they played it so much that they're really not interested in it anymore, and maybe what you have, they're like, hey, I never tried that and I was kind of curious about it, and try to do a gaming swap. Trade game for game, and you'll find, hey, that's you got something new into your library, perhaps something new, and you've helped somebody else out in the same situation. These are all tools that I will use to help me from getting stuck in that rut. And I mean, I got stuck in on a rut really bad, and after I first started this channel, and when I started the channel, I never really had the intention thinking I would have any type of audience, if you will. I figured it was going to be a very small amount of people, if any, and I was just looking for something to kind of fill the time, so I decided to do a couple of videos and put them out there and just see how they did. And to my surprise, they did extremely well, and people were really engaging with it, and I was getting great feedback. And as things kind of moved on from there, I started acquiring more games. A lot of people were suggesting this game and that game, and I've tried this, I've tried that, oh my god, this is amazing, and I found I had stretched myself so thin. I had so many different game systems, so many different rule sets, that at that point that was it. I mean, I just had to set everything down and take a break and walk away and reevaluate and really get back to, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to focus on this particular game at this time, and then next week, if I get time, I'm going to bring this game in. But if I don't, I'm still enjoying this game, then so be it. That's what I'm going to go with. But if the game feels like it's getting stale, it's time to bring something new in and into its place. That way I'm not burning myself out. So that's how I keep from getting gamers burnout. And like I said, it can happen quite often. Now, typically my tabletop always has something set up on it, whether it's miniatures on a map for a current campaign I'm in, whether it's a board game, or at times I may have I may be into, a good example, Skyrim, and I could have the strategy guide out and I got the maps rolled out on the table. and I'm using, but I'm always engaging with something to do with gaming. And there's other times where I'll be painting minis, or I'll be making terrain, and I find sometimes that really does help pass the time, particularly if I'm getting into I normally find this when I start to get cabin fever. And up here in Michigan, that's something that, you know, people that live further north, we experience it. And my friends Lance and Trevor, they, you know, both explained to me in the summer months that they experience, because it's so hot in the south, that they stay locked up indoors all summer because it's just so dangerously hot outside that you don't want to go outside. Whereas with us in the wintertime, you know, after mid-January, it gets so ridiculously cold it can be dangerous to stay outside for any amount of time. And typically, after you go a few months with that and you're cooped up indoors, you start to, at that point, develop cabin fever. You know, nothing seems to really, at that point, hold your attention for very long, and you start getting agitated, and it seems like the littlest things can just set you off, and you just have to get a change of scenery and get out. Typically, when I get to that point of cabin fever in the winter months, and gaming's really not at that point captivating my imagination as the way I can, because I know spring's coming and I know the weather's going to get nicer, what I will do is I will switch up gears, and I'll start doing, at that point, I'll start doing props for tabletop, for my miniature skirmishes. I'll start making these things, and some of these things are ridiculously cheap and simple to do, and it can keep you occupied into the gaming hobby if you're experiencing that. Now, these things I make, and believe it or not, it's just an old paper towel roll and some toothpicks and hot glue and a little bit of paint, and hey, they work out great for when I play Rangers of Shadow Deep, or if I'm playing other miniature based game where I'll have a large game mat set out and I'm putting them down to really shape out the battle map, if you will. And it's another great way that you can work with your hands and your mind and help you overcome that. You're still doing something with gaming, and when you're done, it's something that you're going to have and you're going to be able to use in your gaming as you move forward, and you'll find that perhaps later on down the road you'll find yourself doing more. I hope these help. I really do. These are some of the little tips and tricks that I use. I have found when I get stuck into a rut, and normally, like I said, when I really think about it, you know, what's causing it? Is it internally caused? Is it caused from because I'm playing too much of one system too often and I need to change it up and bring something else in? Or is it external? Am I just paying attention to too much bad news, too much world events that at that point are making me feel down, if you will, and disinterested and depressed? And you know, those are things that you know, at that point I'll combat with watching stuff that's more uplifting, that makes me feel you know, it has me laughing at the end of the video, not gritting my teeth. So anyways, my friends, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this helps you out there if you are experiencing this and you are feeling gamer burnout. You may feel like you're in a rut. I think it's something that every gamer experiences. It just when you're aware when it's happening and you know what to look for, you can at that point prevent it from happening and find other things to put in place for it to, at that point, still enjoy your hobby, still engage with your hobby, but also not get to the point to where it becomes so stale that you wind up just completely putting it down and walking away for good. Alright, my friends, if you enjoyed the video, please click the like button, and I will make more content like it. And if you're new and you just stumbled upon this and made it to the end of the video, don't forget to click that subscribe button followed by the bell icon. Every time I upload a new video, you'll get a notification. Alright, this is Artichoke Dip, signing off.